The midnight sky was a vault of ominous storm clouds, rumbling overhead like distant drums. Rain hammered the pavement, and the neon buzz of a single flickering streetlight revealed a narrow alley still reeking of summer heat. Jason Statham stepped out of his car, the throbbing in his temples reminding him he'd been awake for nearly 20 hours straight. He was in an unfamiliar district of the city. He'd come here on a last-minute impulse after hearing rumors about a small but remarkable youth martial arts program. Rather than scheduling a flashy publicity stunt, he wanted to donate anonymously. Discretion was his plan. But as soon as he cut the engine, a cry for help tore through the hiss of rain. Jason froze, adrenaline blossoming in his chest. That cry wasn't an act. It was raw with terror. Without hesitation, he moved toward the noise. Every nerve in him buzzed, the old fighter's instinct kicking in. Long before he was an actor, he was an athlete, a disciplined martial artist who understood the difference between showy kicks on screen and real danger. He slipped down the dark alley. Lightning flashed overhead, illuminating a horrifying scene. A teenage boy, maybe 16, maybe 17, was pinned against a crumbling brick wall by a monstrous figure. A tall, wiry man dressed in a drenched black GI, sporting a thick black belt. Rain plastered the teen's hair to his forehead, and he fought for breath as the man's hand clenched his throat. The boy's free arm swung in desperation, but he had no leverage. Blood dribbled from his split lip, instantly mixing with the downpour. Jason's pulse thundered. He'd seen vicious street fights before, but this man's eyes burned with cruelty, as if he took joy in the teen's pain. In that flicker of lightning, Jason glimpsed a face contorted by rage and something else, pure, unfiltered dominance. This wasn't a scuffle or a theft. It was a lesson in humiliation. Without waiting for the next beat of thunder, Jason sprinted forward. "Hey!" he roared, voice ripping through the alley. The assailant turned slightly, enough for the teen to suck in a desperate breath of air. The man's gaze found Jason, and for a second, surprise registered. But then it twisted into a sneer. The man let the teen slide to the ground, coughing, choking on the rush of air he'd been deprived of. Slowly, like a lion sizing up new prey, the black belt stepped away from the boy and faced Jason. Rain pummeled them both, washing out the world until only the alley, the glaring streetlight, and their locked eyes existed. Jason caught a flash of the man's posture, solid stance, fists raised just enough to telegraph formal training. Not your average thug. A black belt in some discipline, presumably. Jason couldn't read the embroidered patch on the GI, but the style was no joke. The man had technique, discipline, and the arrogance to use it maliciously. "Got no business here," the man snarled, his accent thick and unplaceable through the roar of rain. "Walk away, unless you want to be next." Instead of replying, Jason positioned himself between the teen and the attacker. He signaled for the boy to move behind him. Beneath his soaked clothes, Jason's own well-trained muscles tensed for the blow he knew was coming. The black belt lunged, throwing a straight punch so quick it cut through the air. Jason twisted to his left, deflecting the blow with his forearm. He felt the impact rattle up his arm. This guy wasn't playing around. Jason countered with a short, explosive elbow strike toward the man's ribs, but the attacker anticipated it. The black belt pivoted swiftly, using the momentum to bring Jason off balance. It was a flurry of motion, punches, blocks, and pure muscle memory. Adrenaline sharpened Jason's focus. This was the reality behind all the choreographed stunts he performed on film sets. On set, you had a partner who wouldn't break your jaw for fun. Here, everything was lethal. The thug's techniques were expertly taught, refined through who knows how many fights. If not for Jason's own years of training, karate, Wing Chun, and endless hours in the gym, he might have ended up sprawled in that filthy puddle, nose broken. One particular strike hammered into Jason's shoulder, lighting up nerves all down his arm. He gritted his teeth, ignoring the pain. He launched a counter kick at the man's midsection, hooking around his waist. Finally, Jason gained an edge. The thug slipped on the slick concrete, giving Jason the opening to drive him backward. The black belt nearly lost balance but righted himself, eyes flaring with fury. Jason planted himself. "Stop this," he shouted, voice raw. He put a hand up, partly to calm the man, partly to show resolve. "You want to keep going, or are you done?" His words only fueled the thug's anger. With a guttural growl, the man charged. Jason sidestepped and aimed a swift punch at the kidney. The attacker cried out, staggering. That moment's vulnerability was all Jason needed. He performed a sweeping leg takedown, dropping the man onto the drenched asphalt, then pinned his arm behind his back in a practice motion that left the man thrashing but trapped. "Let him go," the teen croaked from behind. Jason realized the boy must be terrified that the fight would escalate or that Jason might inflict permanent harm. Breathing hard, heart roaring, Jason scanned the alley for potential threats. The man under him was soaked, cursing vehemently. Through the downpour, the black belt's hatred radiated like heat. Jason's hands trembled with the tension of restraining a combat-trained man. But he tightened his hold, ensuring the guy couldn't break free. "Calm down," Jason said, voice taut. "No one else needs to get hurt tonight." The thug responded with a low, scornful laugh. "Look at you," he spat. "Mr. Movie Star. Think you're some real fighter? You're just a fancy stuntman who got lucky." The words stung not for their literal meaning, but because they dripped with raw contempt. Jason had trained all his life, but to many, he was simply the action hero from Hollywood. This man's voice oozed a different kind of venom, an insult that sliced right into who Jason was. Chest heaving, Jason glanced at the trembling teenager, who clutched his bruised side and stared with wide eyes. The teen's entire body shook, whether from cold or shock. Jason couldn't tell. The man beneath him spat again, straining. Jason realized he was in a precarious position. If the black belt wormed free, the fight might restart with renewed viciousness. Jason made a decision. He pressed the thug's arm once more, just enough pressure to make him think twice about struggling, and locked eyes with the teen. "Get out of here," Jason said firmly. "Find somewhere safe. Go." The teen took off, limping, one hand pressed to his ribs. Jason waited until he was out of sight before letting go of the black belt's arm. The instant he released the tension, the thug twisted and slid away, glaring murderously. He rose slowly, water streaming off his drenched clothes. They stared at one another. The alley was a fortress of shimmering puddles, the storm of violent percussion overhead. Then, in a rasping growl, the black belt let out a string of mocking laughter, cracking his neck and rolling his shoulders. He made no move to flee. Instead, he stared Jason down, a savage grin revealing his teeth. "You're not the savior you think you are," the man hissed, wiping blood from his split lip. "You haven't seen real battle. You just got lucky in the movies, fool." Jason's chest felt tight. He was used to cocky opponents, but there was something different about the hatred in those eyes, a challenge laced with a personal vendetta. The question sizzled in the air. Why had this guy attacked the teen in the first place? And why was he so eager to provoke Jason? Before Jason could respond, the man's grin widened. "Stop me again, and I'll make sure the last sound you hear is your own bones snapping." He took a step back, blending into the shadows. "And everyone will see you as the fraud you are." Lightning flashed. For a moment, Jason saw every muscle in the thug's face twisted in gleeful malice. Then darkness swallowed him. A roar of thunder followed. By the time Jason blinked the rain from his eyes, the alley was empty, and he was alone with the pounding storm. He clenched his fists. Instead of the triumphant glow of having saved someone, unease crawled along his spine. Something about that man's words felt heavier than a random threat. They felt personal, and it made Jason wonder how deeply he'd just waded into a dangerous situation he didn't fully understand. Jason woke the next day with every muscle protesting. The fight from the previous night lingered in his body like a bruise that went clear to the bone. A warm shower didn't chase away the ache. Coffee only helped him feel slightly more human. He absently rubbed his shoulder as he scrolled through his phone, ignoring a flood of missed messages from his agent. There'd be time to deal with movie business later. Images from last night gripped his mind. That savage grin, the teen's terrified eyes, the storm, that mocking voice calling him a fraud. Jason inhaled sharply. He knew better than to let the words of some deranged thug get under his skin. Yet they did. Maybe it was because so many critics called him a mere stunt actor, ignoring the real-life training he'd invested in for years. Or maybe it was the raw malice in that man's voice that unsettled him. He pulled up local news articles, half expecting to see a mention of a random assault in a rundown part of the city. He found nothing. No one had reported an altercation in an alley that night. The teen he saved either hadn't gone to the hospital or had, but kept quiet. Jason got dressed and headed to the one place where he could clear his mind, a little-known mixed martial arts gym on the edge of town. The owner, Merrick, was a no-nonsense man who had trained with a variety of masters around the world, from Muay Thai in Thailand to Judo in Japan. He valued humility and raw skill over fame or fortune. Jason had used the gym whenever he had some downtime in the city, grateful for a space that wasn't swarmed by paparazzi. The moment Jason walked in, the heavy scent of sweat, rubber mats, and steel greeted him. The rhythmic thump of fists against punching bags resonated in the background. A few heads turned, they recognized him, but offered just polite nods. No one rushed him for autographs here. This was a place of respect. Merrick ambled over, wiping his brow. "You look rough," he said in his thick Eastern European accent, though a grin tugged at his lips. "You should see the other guy," Jason replied, but the attempt at humor fell flat. Merrick's sharp gaze narrowed. "What happened?" Jason shrugged off the question. "A run-in with a street fighter. Skilled, strong, and off. You ever see a black belt outside in a storm, roughing up a kid for no reason?" "Black belt in what?" "No idea. A GI with some embroidered patch. I didn't get a good look." Jason felt a wave of frustration. He couldn't shake the feeling that something about that patch might have been important, a clue to the man's style or lineage. Merrick exhaled. "Hard to say. Plenty of legitimate fighters out there who go rogue. Could be a petty man looking to test himself on random victims. Could be." He stopped as a phone buzzed on the wall. A few boxers paused mid-strike, exchanging glances. That ring was unusual in the middle of training. Merrick stepped aside to answer it, leaving Jason alone with his thoughts. He caught sight of another fighter practicing a spinning back kick. His precision stirred Jason's competitive nature, reminding him of the satisfaction in the grind, the discipline. Why did a single interaction with an unhinged thug rattle him so much? He'd faced plenty of tough guys in his life. The difference, he realized, was that this time it felt personal in a way that didn't fit a random alley assault. The man had singled him out, belittled him, threatened to prove Jason wasn't a real fighter. Merrick hung up the phone and returned, brow furrowed. "Strange call for you. Someone asked for you by name. They said something about a demonstration match." Jason tensed. "A demonstration match?" "Yeah, they told me to tell you. If you want to prove you're not just a stuntman, come face me in the ring. The teen was only a sample. Let's see how tough you are when the entire crowd sees the real Jason Statham." Merrick paused, uneasy. "Do you know them?" Jason's fingers curled into fists at his sides. He forced himself to relax. "This had to be that man from last night. We had an encounter. He wants to settle some bizarre grudge. Or show me up in front of a crowd." Merrick frowned. "Jason, the gym doesn't condone street challenges. If he wants to fight, he can sign up for a sanctioned match. We don't do that shady underground stuff." Yet Jason sensed this was beyond the scope of normal regulation. The memory of the teen's battered face flared in his mind. The black belt's promise that he'd snap bones. Could Jason just ignore it? If he did, might that man find some other teen to assault? Or perhaps challenge Jason in the worst possible scenario? "I need to end this," Jason said quietly. "This guy attacked a kid. Next time, who knows what he'll do? If he wants a demonstration, fine. Better I meet him in a ring than let him terrorize the streets." Merrick's jaw tightened as he listened. After a moment, he nodded. "We can try to keep it sanctioned. Official referees, paramedics on standby. If your black belt thug wants to show off, we'll make it legitimate. No more back alley nightmares." A swirl of reluctance and determination coiled in Jason's gut. He'd never craved real violence. He enjoyed the craft of fighting, the discipline, the artistry, the respect. But if stepping into a ring was the only way to stop this thug from preying on vulnerable people, maybe that was the right path. Soon, Merrick was on the phone, contacting some local martial arts promoters. Jason couldn't even remember how the conversation drifted from the alley fiasco to a formal match. But a grain of clarity hardened in his mind. He would expose that man for the cruel predator he was in the most public, undeniable way possible. No more sneering about stunts. No more battered teenagers. Yet, beneath his conviction, a faint, uncomfortable question lingered. Was the thug's skill so extreme that Jason stood a real chance of losing in front of a live audience? And if that happened, what would be the consequences for the kid he tried to protect, and for Jason himself? A few hours later, Jason left the gym with the details swirling in his phone. Word had traveled swiftly. The black belt had accepted the conditions, or so the rumor went. The final confirmation would come soon, and the man's stated purpose? To show the real Jason Statham to the world. As Jason turned the key in the ignition, he allowed himself a bitter laugh. This entire situation sounded absurd, like the plot of a gritty direct-to-video flick. But it was real, and he was committed. The thug was out there, waiting. Jason's chest tightened with a sense of inevitability. He had to be ready for anything. The venue for the demonstration match was a modest auditorium usually reserved for local tournaments. Karate, judo, taekwondo. Not a fancy place, but large enough for a decent crowd. A standard ring sat in the center. Bright lights overhead cast a harsh glare, bouncing off polished floors. People trickled into the seats, drawn by the rumor of seeing Jason Statham in a real fight with some mysterious black belt. The promotional team had done an impressive job, considering the short notice. Word was that the black belt used an alias, Vasil. No last name given. Officially, the demonstration was to be a friendly exhibit of skill, a once-in-a-lifetime chance to watch a Hollywood star test his mettle against a master. The hush in the seats, however, spoke volumes. Everyone sensed that something more dangerous lurked beneath the polite veneer of sportsmanship. Jason arrived with Merrick by his side. Crew members ushered him backstage. A few curious eyes drifted his way, but Jason focused on controlling his breathing. He'd had to do bizarre promotional stunts in his career, but this one felt like stepping into a powder keg. If it were just a matter of public embarrassment, that would be fine. But Jason had no illusions about Vasil's intentions. He was certain Vasil wanted to inflict real damage, not exchange polite bows. Behind the curtain, he spotted the teen from the alley. The sight jolted him. The boy was hunched in a folding chair, a bruise still visible on his jaw, eyes anxious as they darted around. He was wrapped in a worn hoodie, clearly out of place among the fighters and staff. Jason approached quietly. "How'd you get here?" Jason asked. The teen looked up, his eyes filled with gratitude and lingering fear. I heard someone mention a fight. Saw your name. I just wanted to see you. To thank you properly," he stammered. "I'm Malachi." Jason nodded. "Good to meet you properly, Malachi. But you shouldn't be here. This might not be safe." Malachi bit his lip, trembling with nerves. I saw that man. On a poster outside. I recognized him from the alley. Did you arrange this?" Jason hesitated, then decided honesty was best. He wants to prove something. I'm not sure what. But if stopping him in the ring prevents him from doing more harm, I'll do it. Malachi's eyes flickered with a cocktail of relief and terror. I can't stop you, but be careful," he whispered. "He's not normal. I thought he was just mugging me, but the way he fought, it was like he was playing with me. Like he wanted to break me." A shadow passed over Jason's face. He laid a hand gently on Malachi's shoulder. "Don't worry. I'm not going in there to lose." He left the teen in the backstage corridor, making sure Merrick knew to keep an eye on him. Then Jason moved to his dressing area to warm up. The crowd's murmur intensified, the energy in the air crackling. A ring official poked his head in at one point, instructing Jason on how to make his entrance and reminding him that everything had to stay within sanctioned rules. Jason only half listened. In the pit of his stomach, he knew that once they faced off, Vasil might not respect rules. At last, the time came. Jason stepped under the bright lights to a wave of cheers and camera flashes. This wasn't the typical paparazzi fiasco. These were local fight fans. Some had their phones out, filming. Others were on their feet, unsure if they'd be witnessing a friendly exhibition or a savage beatdown. Across the ring, the curtains parted. Vasil strode into view, wearing the same black GI from that rainy alley. His dark hair was slicked back, and his eyes locked onto Jason with predatory glee. The air practically stilled. Even from a distance, Jason felt the malice radiating off him. He also noticed faint gold embroidery on the GI, some stylized emblem. Could be from a lesser-known dojo or an underground fight circuit. They met in the center. The ring official stood between them, reciting the rules. No striking the back of the head, no eye gouging, no joint manipulation outside standard grappling protocols. Both men nodded, but the official's voice trembled slightly. Even he could sense the tension, like two storms colliding. Vasil sneered at Jason. "Ready to show the world who you really are?" he said, just low enough for Jason to hear. A pampered show dog in a real pit fight. Jason refused to engage verbally. He simply rolled his neck, loosening the tension. A part of him longed to retort, but he knew better. Rattling an opponent verbally meant risking a misstep. Instead, he reminded himself of years of training. Control, focus, precision. The bell sounded. Time slowed. Vasil exploded forward with a flurry of strikes, unorthodox angles that forced Jason to backpedal. The first combination was a punishing series of jabs and cross punches. Jason managed to block most of them, but a glancing blow clipped his cheek. Pain flared. Blood trickled from a split just below his eye. So that's how it's going to be, he thought. Jason shifted into a counteroffensive, launching a low kick that caught Vasil's thigh. The man barely flinched. He twisted, returning an elbow strike that grazed the top of Jason's shoulder. Their footwork spun them around the ring in a deadly dance, each testing the other's reflexes. The audience was silent, collectively holding its breath. Then Vasil broke the quiet with a mocking cackle. "Is that all, film star? Thought you had bigger guns." He feinted with a right hook, then slammed a knee into Jason's ribs. Jason gasped, absorbing the impact as best he could, and angled a quick jab into Vasil's torso. The exchange became a whirlwind of skill. Jason felt the sting of a bruise forming on his side. He refused to show pain, pressing forward with combos, punch, elbow, knee, weaving in defenses he'd honed over decades. The man was skilled, no question, possibly better at pure technique than many fighters Jason had encountered. But Jason had grit, stamina, and the drive to end this for good. An electric jolt of adrenaline surged when Jason managed a solid blow to Vasil's jaw, snapping his head back. The crowd exhaled in amazement. Yet Vasil merely grinned, as if enjoying it. He circled Jason, forcing him to pivot to keep up, eyes never leaving their target. With a growl, Vasil lunged again, hooking his forearm around Jason's neck in a clinch. Jason found himself locked chest to chest with the man, their muscles straining. That's when Vasil spoke in a low, venomous tone that only Jason could hear. "You beat me in that alley because I let you. Now, I'll break you. Let the world witness it." The ring official tapped Vasil's shoulder to break the clinch. Vasil complied reluctantly, releasing Jason, but not before he twisted just enough to jab an elbow painfully into Jason's rib cage. Jason stifled a groan, stepping back to reset his stance. He saw Malachi's face in the crowd, pale with worry. The boy was leaning forward, hands knitted together. Something inside Jason solidified. He squared his shoulders. If Vasil wanted to drag him through the mud, so be it. But he wouldn't let the thug walk away victorious. Jason controlled his breathing, remembering old lessons. Let your opponent's arrogance be their downfall. Keep your composure. He bounced lightly on his toes, ignoring the throbbing in his side. Vasil lunged again, this time with a wide left hook. Jason ducked, shot an uppercut that caught Vasil under the chin, rattling his teeth. The crowd came alive with cheers. Jason's punch had found its mark. Vasil staggered, blinking rapidly. Jason advanced, hoping to capitalize, but Vasil recovered shockingly fast. He backhanded Jason's arm away and whipped around with a spinning back kick. Jason tried to block, but he couldn't fully absorb the blow. It slammed into his forearm and ribs. Pain flared white-hot in his side, nearly buckling him. Jason stumbled, vision hazy. He forced himself not to drop to one knee. He heard the crowd roar, unsure if it was from excitement or alarm. Vasil's smirk told Jason he was right where the man wanted him. Injured, vulnerable. Sucking in a breath, Jason righted himself, fists raised. His heart hammered like a war drum. He'd been in real fights before, but there was something almost feral about Vasil. This was a sadist who relished each blow, each sign of weakness. Blood trickled down Jason's chin. He refused to think about the cameras. He refused to think about how many people might be streaming this live. Instead, he focused on one thing: neutralizing a predator. Even if he had to endure a beating, he wouldn't let Vasil's cruelty go unchallenged. Vasil smelled blood, figuratively and literally, and pressed the attack. Blow after blow rained on Jason's defenses, forcing him to parry, block, weave. Each successful block still reverberated through Jason's aching arms. A lesser fighter would have folded. But Jason had been a competitive diver, a street seller, and eventually a movie star. He understood grit, the will to push forward even when every nerve screamed for mercy. They traded strikes, arcs of sweat flying under the glaring lights. Jason's breathing was ragged, but he refused to let fatigue dominate him. He pivoted, slamming a short hook into Vasil's kidney. The response was immediate. Vasil roared in anger, then pistoned a knee into Jason's thigh. Pain shot up Jason's leg, almost toppling him. But Jason clung to discipline. He deflected a follow-up punch and countered with a quick front kick that sent Vasil stumbling backward. The crowd erupted, sensing Jason's resurgence. Somewhere at the edge of his vision, Jason saw Malachi cheering, fists pumping in the air. That small flash of hope stoked Jason's determination. Vasil, however, was far from finished. He circled Jason, stance predatory. "I expected more," he taunted, "but you're just another punching bag. No better than that sniveling brat in the alley." Jason snarled. That triggered something protective deep inside him. He lunged, launching a flurry of jabs. Vasil blocked two, but the third hammered his collarbone. Jason followed with a sweeping leg kick. Vasil's torso twisted to avoid the brunt, yet the blow still found enough purchase to buckle him slightly. For the first time, Jason saw a real shock flash across Vasil's face. The official hovered nearby, watching carefully. Under normal circumstances, if either fighter was in true danger, the official would step in. But the tension in the ring suggested this was anything but normal. The official likely sensed that both men would ignore any half-hearted stoppage. Vasil wiped blood from his mouth. "I'll tear you to pieces," he hissed, barely containing his rage. He lunged with a savage front kick, catching Jason off guard. The impact rattled Jason's sternum, sending him crashing onto the mat. The air whooshed from his lungs. For a split second, he saw stars. The overhead lights blurred. The raucous cheering morphed into a distant roar in his ears. Vasil wasted no time. He pounced, intending to finish the fight right there. He pinned Jason's shoulder and drew back a fist to deliver a brutal strike to his head. In that instant, something primal in Jason roared awake. With a last surge of adrenaline, he twisted his hips, bringing up his left leg. He hooked it around Vasil's attacking arm, using leverage to yank the man off balance. Vasil fell forward, startled, and Jason rolled free. The crowd gasped. Jason scrambled to his feet, ignoring the throbbing in his chest. Vasil rose an instant later, eyes murderous. A moment of hush fell, as if the entire auditorium collectively held its breath. Even the official looked pale, uncertain how to contain what was unfolding. They stood panting, each battered, each unwavering. Jason thought of Malachi's bruised face. He thought of all the potential victims if Vasil continued rampaging unchecked. He thought of the mocking laughter that had taunted him ever since that night in the alley. In one swift heartbeat, he resolved to end this. Vasil came in hard. Jason met him with a textbook block, then retaliated with a rapid 1-2 punch. Vasil evaded the first, but the second crashed against his jaw, snapping his head sideways. The man staggered, spitting blood. Sensing his opening, Jason feinted a low sweep. Vasil shifted his weight to counter, and Jason exploded upward with a knee strike to Vasil's solar plexus. A strangled grunt tore from Vasil's throat. He doubled over. Jason roared with effort, bringing down a hammer fist onto Vasil's shoulder blades, driving him to the mat. The auditorium erupted in noise. A few spectators shouted for Jason to finish him. Others seemed transfixed by the raw ferocity. The official rushed closer, uncertain. Vasil struggled to push himself up, but his limbs trembled. Jason seized his wrist, pinning the arm behind the man's back in a hold reminiscent of their alley confrontation. "Tap out," Jason demanded, voice low, eyes blazing. "This ends now." Vasil's head whipped around. His face was twisted with hatred. He coughed, blood flecking his lips. "I'll never concede to a fake." Jason gritted his teeth, applying gradual pressure. He knew the hold well enough to avoid permanently injuring Vasil, unless he refused to stop. The ring official hovered, ready to intervene, eyes darting uncertainly. "Tap out," Jason repeated. This time, his voice carried an urgency, a final warning. Vasil's eyes bulged, and for a moment, it looked as though he might let his arm snap rather than surrender. Then he spat on the mat, a bitter, venomous gesture, and slapped the ground 3 times. The official signaled the end, stepping in. Jason exhaled a shaky breath, releasing the hold. The crowd erupted in chaotic celebration. Some roared Jason's name. Camera flashes popped like fireworks. Malachi stood near the barricade, tears streaking his cheeks. Whether from relief or joy, Jason didn't know. A wave of exhaustion crashed over Jason, every bruise blazing to life now that the adrenaline was ebbing. He stood, offering a customary bow to the official. Then, ignoring the cheers, he turned toward Vasil. The man knelt on the mat, gingerly clutching his twisted arm. Jason half expected a final cheap shot, but Vasil simply glared at him, seething with humiliation. Jason leaned in, voice quiet enough that only Vasil could hear. "Your skill is real. That's the only compliment you'll get from me. But your cruelty has no place in the ring or the street. You could have fought with honor, but you chose fear and brutality." Vasil's lips curled back. "I'm not finished with you," he growled, though the words were choked. "You'll regret." "Enough," the ring official's voice boomed, stepping between them. Security approached, uncertain if they should escort Vasil out or allow him to leave under his own power. Jason stepped back, letting them handle it. He strode to the edge of the ring, where Malachi stood. The teen stared at him wide-eyed, overwhelmed. Jason forced a pained smile. "You good?" he asked softly. Malachi nodded, struggling for words. I can't believe. You did it." Jason reached over the ropes, gently clasping Malachi's shoulder. "He won't be bothering you anymore," he said. It was a promise, though part of him knew that men like Vasil sometimes slink back for revenge. Still, at least for now, it was over. A wave of reporters and fans pressed forward, microphones and phones outstretched. Jason caught a glimpse of Vasil being helped away, still radiating fury. Something about that glare told Jason that this story wasn't as simple as winning a match. But in that moment, the victory belonged to everyone who wanted to see a bully defeated. He let himself be herded from the ring, ignoring the barrage of questions. "Were you afraid? Is this your new career? How does it feel to fight a real black belt off screen?" He shook his head politely, not wanting to feed the sensationalism. All that mattered was that Malachi was safe, and Vasil's cruelty had been exposed for the world to see. In the dressing room, Jason sagged onto a bench. Merrick rushed in, a grin splitting his features. "That was intense, my friend," he said, grabbing Jason's wrist to check the swelling. "But you proved yourself." Jason exhaled a dry laugh. "Didn't do it for me." He shook his head. "I did it to stop him." Merrick nodded. "And you did." Yet a heaviness lingered in Jason's chest. Vasil's mocking words echoed. "You'll regret this." He knew from personal experience that wounded pride could be a dangerous motivator, especially in a violent man's hands. But for now, At least the battle was won. After cleaning up, Jason left the auditorium. The night air felt cool against his battered face. Flashing lights from fans' phones followed him to his car, but he managed to slip away into the darkness. As he drove, the city's neon signs glowed faintly, reflected on the streets. For the first time since that stormy alley, Jason felt a sliver of calm. He had stood up for someone who couldn't fight back. He had fought a man who thrived on hurting others. No matter what came next, no matter how many naysayers claimed he was just another Hollywood action star playing tough, Jason knew the truth. He had stepped up when it counted. He had faced a monster and won. And perhaps that small victory would be enough. For Malachi, for anyone else that might have been next in Vasil's line of fire, and for Jason himself, who had proven once more that real heroism didn't require a camera rolling. He allowed himself a final thought of the black belt's parting glare. Then he exhaled, letting it slip into the background of the dimly lit streets. Tomorrow, he'd deal with the aftermath. Tonight, he'd accept the battered peace that came from standing up for the vulnerable and surviving to tell the tale. End.